Welcome to the Self-Belief and Influence podcast, where we talk with people who have great influence in the Metro Detroit business community. We discuss all aspects of their journey, including the moments where they have had to draw deeply on their self-belief and inner drive to achieve their vision. My name is Keith Baldwin, and my co-host is Nathan Hardecki, and our podcast is sponsored by Regal Payments and Push Media. These conversations with our diverse guests will potentially make you re-examine your ideas about people, business, and life in general. Here's a taste of what's coming up today.
This is also remembering the little things that got you where you are and never ceasing to do those things, because once you do and complacency sets in, someone else is going to catch up and figure it out and be able to surpass you. And if you want to maintain that success, you put as much good and much work out there as you can, but you never lose sight of the little things that got you where you are.
Let's explore and scrutinize together as we unlock the mind of today's guest to provide you with inspiration and tangible takeaways that you can choose to apply in your life. Today's guest is Mike Palmer, who is the driving force behind the 13 locations of Premier Pet Supply in Metro Detroit. Mike's story is a very interesting one of how he made his uncle an offer he couldn't refuse in the late 90s to take over the one location. Since then, Mike's helped grow that location and in recent times expanded to 13 total. And you'll hear from Mike how he competes against the big guys such as the Petcos and the new big online guys such as Chewy, yet still has a very loyal following as he's developed his local brand. Please remember to like and subscribe to the pod. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Keith. Nathan.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, one thing we do in the podcast, once we interview someone from a certain business vertical, we won't interview them again. They're in that vertical. So you're going to be our main retail guy. And I think it's kind of interesting because when we were speaking, there's shows out there like Shark Tank and some other things, and people want to go into business for themselves. And I think a lot of people maybe think, I'll just open a retail store, but it's not always that easy, especially with the overhead, right?
It's absolutely not. I think people have a great vision and idea in owning their own business, but they a lot of times go into it because they have a love for whatever it may be. You know, if they're a great physical, trainer, but they think they can run a business opening a gym, it doesn't necessarily, resonate or relate if you don't know business and recognize that there is a lot that comes along with that. Very long hours and a lot of overhead to deal with, as opposed to just training someone, for an hour, and there's definitely more to it.
Yeah. Now, when you run your own business, I think it's a bit of a mindset of wanting to have a bit of freedom, wanting to help others. I know in my life, there was a couple of moments when I was 17, 18, where I never had this great vision of running my own business. And then you work for someone and then something you don't like a few things and then something happens and you realize, if you did it yourself, you have a bit more freedom. And I know we were speaking about when you were working for your uncle at Marina, that's kind of when you sort of realized owning your own business in the future might be a good idea.
Yeah, uncle that had a small market in Belleville, Michigan. It also had a marina on the lower level off Belleville Lake. And working in the summers on weekends with him was the highlight of my year. And I really loved what I saw from him and the interactions and the feeling I could just sense in the energy, from the pride in owning his own business. And I absolutely at that point in time recognized that I wanted that same feeling. I wanted that same experience. And I never wanted to work for anyone. I wanted to be able to do my own thing.
Yeah, and now you certainly are. You have 12 locations, is that right?
13 now.
13.
Yep.
I'm behind.
Growing by the minute.
13 locations, and I know you've helped other people and given advice as they've set up pet stores around the country. One thing when you build a business, we've talked to other business owners, is the common theme is they like to build a community. And we'll come on to a lot of the things that you do in a community, as well as building a community within your store. Pet adoptions is a big thing that you do at your store. I'm sure it brings a lot of people into your store, but is it correct? How many animals have you helped adopt? Over 3,000, is that right, by being in there?
Easily, and it may even be more. I think just in the last year, just through our cat adoption centers inside our stores, we adopted out just cats alone over 600 last year. So in the course and over the course of 31 years with all the rescue groups that we've worked with, it's hard to put a number exactly on that, but I'm sure it would easily surpass over 10,000 animals adopted, dogs and cats, both through our locations.
All right, let's start to jump towards where we are today. When did you take over from your uncle? How many stores were there? What made the transition happen? Did he stay involved for a long time? Let's go from you being in there to now, kind of where
Sure.
you took over.
Over the years, we really became known for our selection and our service and the experiences that we provided. And to this day, I try my best to maintain all of that. The dynamic was interesting as to where we were located in that we did have Birmingham, Michigan, a mile north of us, where you have multi-million-dollar homes. And we had, which doesn't exist anymore, but we had a trailer park called the Southfield Downs at 12 and a half in Southfield, a half a mile south of us. So we were pulling literally from every income level. And I wanted to make sure I catered to every single person that came through that door. And it was really important to me that I didn't make anyone feel uncomfortable or alienated them based on the budgetary, needs that they had. And because everyone loves their pets and, wants to take good care of them, it's the reason why they come to us. So we wanted to make sure we took good care of all of them. So we became known because of that, as a store that really had everything. And we, wanted it from top to bottom, to the boutique items at the high end, the holistic and natural products. We were kind of a pioneer in the area in carrying that type of product. But we also had the national brands, the budget foods and that, so that anyone that walked through, we had something for them. And I was taught by my mother who also worked retail, whoever you work for or whatever company that you're working with, treat that business as if it were your own. And I really did my best to do that, to a point where people just assumed that I owned the business. With as far as my uncle goes, what I did in the most considerate way is I got him out of there. And that was by just taking on more and more of his responsibilities and just making it easier for him. So by the time I was around 21 or 22, I was running the store entirely on my own. And that was just a few years after I had started. Not having come from money at all, it took me a long time, but I saved as much as I could. And I made him an offer when I was around 24 years old to buy half the store from him. And what I had offered to him was the opportunity to lock me in and not have to worry about me doing anything else or going anywhere at all. And then for me, it would enable me to now own the business that I had already been treating as if it were my own. And I made a promise to him. I said, I will make it so that you will be more successful owning half this business than you ever were owning 100% of it. I was very ambitious, but I meant that, wholeheartedly. And he laughed, not as if he was making fun of that statement, but he laughed as if that was very bold for you to be making a claim that way, and maybe thought it was part of me just making a hard sell. But I truly meant that, and I made good on that promise. It took me 3 years, but and within 3 years, he was making more money owning 50% of that store than he was owning 100% of it. And that was just because I just continued to work my tail off and building relationships with our customers, building relationships in the community surrounding us, and working with the rescues and doing as much as we could to build that reputation. And so fast forward, it took several years for me to get to a point where we could grow our stance in the Metro Detroit area. But go ahead.
I'm just interested over the years, kind of obviously the lessons you learn, but I'm just thinking, because I had leadership and management in my 20s, and I made so many mistakes.
Yeah.
So you put it as confident and bold, and it's now your store, and you've got 12 plus employees. I'm sure at times you maybe made some mistakes in how you handle situations with them, or they're like, didn't like some of the things you did as a boss. I'm sure they liked a lot, but I look back at some things in my 20s like, I just wouldn't have done that so differently. And then
Sure.
You learn from it and move. What were some, I guess, leadership mistakes you made in that first year when actually you were the guy?
Well, I'd say the greatest challenge was that I was managing people that were my age and some older. And when you're younger, it's still very difficult, because I also have managers that are younger that are now managing people their age that they want to be friends with, and they want them to like them, and they also like them as well, say outside of the store. And managing people older, it's a challenge in that you're trying to find a balance, because I'm the type that has a hard time if someone doesn't like me. I want to please people, and I want to be everything to everyone. But when you're running a business should come first. And there's a gray area there when you're dealing with people that are your friends outside of work. And so not being as direct, is something that I probably struggled with when I was younger. But I've learned that when you are, and you're upfront and more honest, as opposed to trying to back your way into a conversation or into any type of scenario where you have to actually correct someone. It takes time, and it's a tough one. I think earlier on with that ambition, I felt that I could, take on all the competition. Pet Supplies Plus still has a strong hold in the metro area, but at the time was even stronger. And I felt that I could be competitive with them. So one big mistake I made was trying to be competitively priced with them. I'd say we're able to with the buying power that we have, but back then we couldn't. So I reduced our margins in order to get our pricing as low as what theirs was. And it was one of the worst years for our margin, one of the worst years for our profit. And I learned the hard way that if you stick to what makes you who you are, and not worry so much about being competitive as far as pricing goes, people will recognize the added value you have with the service, with the experience, with the general ambiance and look of your stores, as opposed to price. People will see past that. And it took me making that mistake to figure that one out. So those are a couple of the things that I really had a hard time and I struggled with early on.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. If people just buy on price, that's all they're looking at. They come and look at your price, their price, and they're not looking at you and what you're offering, and you're never going to retain that customer anyway.
Yeah.
So, building the community is huge. Talking about managing people, what is something you look back on, and it's not necessarily, I should have fired someone or I should have corrected, but maybe you let someone stay too long because you are that kind of people pleaser. And did that end up having a negative effect? Maybe you let someone stay an extra 3 months and it turned a bit toxic. And what sort of people management skills did you learn from your first real people management mistake you made?
Sure. I don't know if it's a fault of mine, but I have a tendency to give people not only a second chance, but a third chance. And I'll tell you, it's probably 50-50. I'm a believer in people, and if I feel that someone's not worthy of an opportunity, I'm not a total pushover. But I see the good in people, and I see what people's abilities are, and I feel that, with a little pep talk and an explanation of the faults that they're having and the shortcomings and what my expectations are. I've seen where it has not necessarily backfired, but just hasn't worked out, and if it doesn't work out, you've already had those conversations and explained to that person the things that you need to see from them. And they just haven't, been up to snuff or been able to meet those expectations. And you're able to have an easier conversation in letting them go. And there's, no reason why they shouldn't understand that. But the flip side of that is, when I have given people an opportunity and they've definitely kind of come through with shining colors and proven to me and to themselves, more importantly, what they're capable of, it makes it, giving people those second and third chances definitely worth the time, and I still am that way, and sometimes I'll have, partners or their managers like, you really want to give this person another shot. They've let us down so many times, or they continue to come in late, or they're missing shifts. I said, I know there's got to be something more to that. Let me see if I can just work with them a little. And some never get it. Some do, and they figure it out. And you know what? Our job, our business, I should say, for many is a stepping stone towards some other type of career, going off to college and working on whatever it may be they're doing in the future. But working in retail, the experience in having a job that you've got to show up to, you've got to be accountable for, and punctual and presentable, in dealing and interacting with people, is a great experience that many have come back to me years later and thank me for the opportunity. And many have come back and thanked me for the second opportunity and the second chance when maybe someone else may not have believed in them. And a lot of them are younger, and I find myself in a position, in a role where we've got to kind of shape and mold these young individuals into good human beings. And, it may just be a little pet store, but I think we have a significant impact on people in general. And I implore anyone, that's younger at any point in time to work somewhere in retail, because they're just fantastic experiences that you can absolutely apply to any aspect of not only a future career, but also in life.
What is your process when you're identifying these people that you're going to hire on? We talked about how you deal with people that maybe are an issue or having struggles. But I know for me personally, one of the things I like most is the customer service that you guys provide. I can't think of a time where it was poor or honestly where there wasn't a question answered. How do you identify those people and then bring them into this community you've created?
Sure. So with our business, first and foremost, you got to be a pet lover. But at its core, it's very important to me just to have people that understand that being able to interact with others is important. It's more challenging now, for a lot of these kids, and it's not their fault. I mean, social media has kind of set them back, and COVID has really set them back. And so, the challenge has been greater than ever in just getting them to make eye contact, getting them to be able to engage. And, we've got to do a lot more coaching and counseling than we ever have before. But just in general, it's just what I'm looking for is very personable, charismatic individuals that have a love for animals.
So moving now, you've had the store a couple of years and it's doing well. You've made good on your bold claim to your uncle. You've paid him back, or he's not paid him back, but he's making great money off of the growth you've had. So it would be easy to be comfortable. You run a great store. But now in your mind it's racing and you want to grow the store, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure and we'll talk about how you did that in a second. I'm sure when you did, there was probably some pushback of like, well, why do you want to put us in debt? Why do you want to do that? We're doing great here. One quote I always like is from MLK, where he says, ultimately, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. So how did you bring people along with you when you decided to go from one store to multiple stores? And I'm sure there were some doubters at the time.
Sure. So I had great managers with me. One was a cousin of mine that had worked since he was 15 years old. He's going to be 40 this year. And another had run, actually two others that had run several pet supply stores that were helping me manage that Beverly Hills location. So I had locations figured out. I presented to each of them. I said, guys, I've got locations. I know that you really, truly shouldn't be employees of mine forever. You need to be doing your own thing, and you should. But I'd rather it be with me selfishly, and I could create and provide these opportunities by getting these locations for us. Would you like to partner? And unanimously, they agreed and thought it was a great idea and a great opportunity for them. And so a managing partner on paper, but they're like 50-50 partners and brothers of mine. And I'm very proud of that model, and that we opened 7 years ago, 3 other locations. I opened one with each of them. And that was in Rochester Hills, Michigan, Livonia, Michigan, and Novi, Michigan. And so we went from 1 to 4 within a calendar year, and it worked out really well. And, like I had mentioned, they had to bring their own money to the table. So they had some skin in the game, which really makes it worth it for me, because I know that, it's going to matter to them. The harder they work, the more successful they'll be.
It's like an adapted franchise, not really a franchise, but you have to buy in,
right?
But you have to be approved, and you have to go through the training methods that you set forth.
Yeah, and it made sense because it worked for my uncle. When I presented and pitched it to him from the other side, and I felt like if I did the same thing with bringing these guys on to be partners of mine, that the success would resonate, and it proved to be true.
Going back just a little, I know you're a guy that likes to keep your finger on the pulse. You spent 23 years at one location. You had 3 guys that I know you trusted. You knew they were going to be great partners. That first month, 2 months, when you're trusting these stores are open, you're at your location, these guys are at their location. How did you deal with that?
Well, I wanted to be there every day to meet these new customers.
You didn't set up cameras and be in the back room.
Yeah, no, I just physically made sure I had a presence. I was very fortunate that the existing location, I wouldn't say it was autonomous, but we had a pretty good thing going in that I had good people in place that I didn't have to be there every minute of the day, even though it seemed like I was anyway. But I made time just to be there every day when we first opened each one of those locations, because I wanted to meet our customers and see what they were looking for, or what their reaction was to the mix of products, or just us being in their community, and being able to say, hey, thank you for coming in. This is my family business, and I appreciate, the opportunity for us to earn your trust and hopefully your business over time. And people really appreciate seeing that. Even, to this day, when I help people in the aisle, I say, thank you so much for choosing to shop here. This is my family business. And people take a second. They're like, wow, I didn't realize that. That's fantastic. Knowing that now, I will always come here. And, and so I know how important it was just to be around.
With the staff, I was wondering how you recognize high performance or just people consistently doing a good job. What sort of mechanisms do you have for it? And back in the day when I was in my early 20s in England, I worked at TGI Fridays. I had the flair and all that stuff. They used to do wow pins, which was good for a couple, but after a while you get a few wow pins. It's like, I need something. Yeah, it's like I'm not wowed by the wow pin anymore. What do you do to recognize people consistently doing a good job for you?
So, I'd say there's some good from that, and there's some things that we need to learn to do better as well. But, when you've got an individual that, is consistent in showing up on time, and their customer service is just fantastic, and they always have a smile on their face no matter what. I mean, those are the ones that stand out. They're the leaders. They're the ones that, have that great work ethic and recognizing things that need to be done without having to be told or without having to ask. The ones that have the initiative. And with that, truly what we try our best to do is to create opportunities in making them leaders in the stores by giving them, management titles of some aspect. Where I could do a better job and where I've recognized we may have a shortcoming is that just because someone is a hard worker and has all those great attributes I had mentioned doesn't mean they have the skills to manage others. And so where we see someone who is a standout and we are able to, give them a higher rate of pay and a title in the store of a manager, what we could do a better job of, and we're constantly conscientious of and doing, is training them to be good managers as well. Because just because you're a good employee doesn't mean you're a good manager of business and of people. And so we do definitely reward them, with giving them a higher and greater status in the store. But what we're also recognizing is we need to award them with the skills that come along with that.
Okay.
I appreciate the community you've developed. I think it's so rare now to have these small local businesses. Yeah, it's small. I mean, 13
Sure.
stores is still small, but
Yeah.
but to have the culture that you develop, to have the presence in the community, to have a face associated with the business is so rare anymore, and I just appreciate it so much.
I appreciate that. I think in general, when you have a business, especially in a community and smaller communities, the right thing is to put as much good out there as you possibly can. Obviously, it applies to life as well, right? You put good out there and good comes back, but you do it without the hope for immediate reciprocation. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think over time, people will recognize that and they'll want to support that. It may not happen immediately, and and you have to just be consistent. I mean, just this past weekend, I worked 3 events, and it wasn't like I sent people to do these events. I'm setting up the tent, I'm setting up the table, I'm getting in front of people and I'm talking to them. It's just also remembering the little things that got you where you are and never ceasing to do those things, because once you do and complacency sets in, someone else is going to catch up and figure it out and be able to surpass you. And if you want to maintain that success, you put as much good and much work out there as you can, but you never lose sight of the little things that got you where you are.
Now, we are called the Self-Belief and Influence podcast because to get to a position of influence where you are right now, there had to be moments where you had to dig deep and really find some self-belief and get yourself out of certain situations. What was a tough time where you really had to call on those reserves of self-belief?
I think when it can be very daunting when you overthink things as far as your position in life, and I've had circumstances where you start to think to yourself, I've got 13 stores. I've got partners that are counting on me. We've got over 200 employees that are counting on me. I've got 4 kids at home and a wife and all these things. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, is overthinking everything. But I think if you just truly focus on what's at hand, I know it seems like something that people probably will say time and time again, but you just focus on what's in front of you. Not over or dwell on the mistakes you've made in the past, because you can't change any of that. But what you can, do is change what's happening in front of you. And
Do you
right
find
now.
it easy to forgive yourself?
No,
no?
not at all.
You keep dwelling on it, made the mistake, but at some point you got to move on, right?
Yeah, I do. I beat myself up, and I do. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I feel the guilt, and maybe that isn't on how I was raised, but I'm almost 50 now, and it's getting easier, I don't have the anxieties of I'm not at this store right now. What's happening? What are the conversations that are going on? How are the things being handled? And I try not to get worked up about the things that I have no control over, and just really just focus on the things that I can. And once you start doing that, it just gets easier.
What advice would you give to someone of how to do that? Yeah, because I've heard those sayings of, analysis to paralysis, where you just overanalyze and you just get stuck in that moment, especially for people who maybe are perfectionists or just maybe find it hard to release control. How did you kind of just calm down on that and just move on?
I believe, like I had mentioned before, in people and giving them the ability to do their own thing. And I was taught a long time ago that there are many things that you may see as a burden in your business, but if you would give the responsibility to others, they'll see it as an opportunity. And that in doing so, you're also giving up some control. And, as a business owner, and many people, I'm sure, not just myself, love to have their finger on the pulse of all things, and also, have a hard time giving up some control. But you have to think to yourself, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, in my business, it's not life or death. If someone maybe might miss an order or over order, everything can be fixed. If I say I give them a responsibility of writing orders, if somebody writes a schedule and I'm not writing the schedule, and maybe there's a few too many hours. Well, you know what? The next week we just cut back on those hours. Everything can be fixed. There isn't anything that I've recognized would be incredibly detrimental to our business. That if you allow people to make mistakes, they learn from those mistakes, and that's just the best thing to keep in mind. You have to give people the opportunity to make those mistakes. I mean,
right.
I think that is the best investment in people, are them having the opportunity to learn from having those mistakes.
I'm sure over the past years, if you've seen different TV shows about businesses, and you ever see Undercover Boss?
I have.
Where you put on a dodgy wig and a mustache, and no one actually believes that disguise, but they go along with it because the camera's there.
Sure.
If you were in a dodgy wig in a store and pretending to be Bob, a first-time employee, and you said, "Hey, what's a couple of things you would like to change about this store?" What do you think an employee would say is a couple of improvements they would like to see?
It's a great question. I think I'd love to know what they actually would think of.
I'll go put on a wig and go.
It's hard to say. I think that, the one thing I will tell you, if at all, I know, even though I feel we do a really great job of what we do, I know that we can always be better. So constructive criticism is something I feed off of. You can have someone patting you on the back all day long, telling you how great you are. You can never become better from that. But what, has made us better is listening to the employees, and maybe some of the things that they'd said, would help and make things easier for them or to better the business. To paying more attention to the possible and potential negative reviews online, and learning from those as well. I actually look forward to the 1 and 2 star reviews. We don't have many, but we definitely have some, and every business does. For some people that put those reviews out there, I think it's just some are silly, but others, people truly have good in their minds, good reasoning for what they're stating and saying, and I love responding and I see those as opportunities. So I'm not sure what an employee may say, and I do know, and I do see on a daily basis the things that
you think it might. You would hope maybe it'd be more just kind of, I'd like to see this product or that product, rather than I would like to see this culture shift. Do you feel everyone's pretty bought into your culture and is happy with it?
Over the years, I will say, and I think we've learned from it. We've had some employees say, I never felt like I was trained really well in this aspect of the store. I really don't feel I know enough about this aspect, and I feel silly when a customer asks me a question I don't really know how to answer.
Right.
And so, if anything, that's where we're trying to get better, is in training modules and doing better training of all aspects of our business. So I think that may be one thing, but definitely taking feedback when it comes to any employee that says, "Hey, I'm not on social media as much as these kids are, but hey, I saw this product on TikTok. It's awesome. And it's popping up on every feed I have. You should really look into bringing this in. And I've done that on several occasions, and it's proven to work out really well. So always listening to your employees, always listening to your customers is key into growing.
So the growth's been pretty quick, 7 years to get to 13 stores. Take it forward another 10 years, not just kind of where you would be, but how do you see things changing as well? I mean, obviously you grow your business by having great community. Other retail pet stores probably aim for the same thing. Now you've got Chewy.com and other places. So there's competition everywhere, like there is in every industry.
Sure.
What does the next 10 years look like for you?
It's hard to say, and it's tough because we're at a point, at 13 stores, I think, 13 to 15 stores is probably where we max out in our capabilities end as far as trying to day-to-day operation manage. I'm of the thought that the further you get from the nucleus, the more things have a tendency to unravel. So I really, it's very important to me that we're able to maintain consistency throughout all of our stores and all the communities that we're in. And I feel that once we get larger, and if we were to get larger, that would be more of a challenge to be able to manage. So, the possibilities are, do we look at bringing in a partner that could help us grow? I don't think so, because then I start to lose more control, and again, it goes back to my thought is I'm not trying to be a huge chain with a crazy number of stores. That's not super important to me. Do we possibly franchise? That's an opportunity. I've had several people offer and ask over the years and inquire about franchising, possibly. That way we still maintain some control and are able to grow, in the market. There's the possibility of just selling in general. But I don't work every day with the mindset that we're going to sell this business. I work every day with the mindset that I'll be back tomorrow to work another day. I really enjoy what I do. I really am proud of what we've built, and I want to continue to grow that. But the challenges are great. I mean, you mentioned Chewy.com. They do an amazing job of advertising and marketing their business. Even if you don't have a pet, you know who Chewy.com is. Prior to COVID, just 4 or 5 years prior, their revenues were around $800 million. COVID was a shot in the arm that I feel they definitely didn't need, but people stayed home and people wanted to order online and not have to leave their homes. Just this last year, their revenues were $9.2 billion. So the jump was significant during COVID. And so we're trying to do our best to offset that. So we provide.
You have an online
we
store?
Do
you deliver as well?
We do.
Yeah.
And for the first 2 years and through COVID, I was the delivery boy. I'm putting 35, 40,000 miles on my car every year for 2 years straight. We have a local company now that facilitates delivery for us, but we do have an online presence. We do offer the same conveniences as the online retailers. We are competitively priced. We have opportunities to save people even more money, but it's really tough because we're in a set it and forget it society to get people off of a Chewy, because admittedly Chewy does a really good job, but we can do the same job, but it's a matter of somehow, and I'm still struggling to do so, getting people to understand that supporting local without sounding biased, because obviously we're trying to gain their business, but if we can provide you the same product, the same conveniences, the same free local delivery within the same day, why shop with the Chewy, and have that money go off into the abyss as opposed to keeping it local and keeping us, supporting local businesses like we do and employing local people and giving back to local charities and rescues and that. And so I'm struggling in that it's hard to get people away from Chewy, but I'm successful in that we're getting ahead of it and getting people, prior to that experience and helping them to recognize that we can do all those same things and even more.
It seems like your story is almost coming full circle in a way where you were trying to compete with not Premier Pet Supply, but Pet Supplies Plus early on in your career, cutting your prices. Now you're trying to do the same thing with Chewy, but I mean, the product you provide at your stores is so valuable. So
I appreciate that, and thank you, and it's the experience as well. The things that we offer as far as services go, and having different. We got ice cream socials planned. You can't do that online.
Yeah, right.
You got to do yourself dog wash rooms in our stores. You can't do that online. I mean, parties and rescue events and just being able to touch and feel, and being able to talk to someone who we've got pet food nutritionists, we've got pet food experts, and being able to work people through problems and find solutions for them. I think in general, people are coming around to wanting to have that again. And COVID set people back, but the experiences and just walking in the door and being able to bring your pet with you, there's not many opportunities you have to do that. And in general, that's a big part of the reason why we've had our successes and our businesses continue to grow.
I got two more questions for you. It was one, but now it's two. You mentioned bringing the pet in. Give me the craziest pet story in the past 20 years. Some dog went crazy, or there was a big dog fight or something. There's got to be some story.
I know, an animal story.
I think Nathan knows this one because we talked about it. But the craziest story just happened within the last year, and it wasn't a person bringing in a pet or an animal in. It was a deer that literally ran through our front doors and decided to just go on a tirade throughout the store.
You just had some carrots in the front display, and
I'm still trying to figure it out. But he crossed Southfield Road, which is 5 lanes, and ran right in through the front door. It was in the fall, and
was the front door open, or he smashed through it?
The first door was open. We have double doors that sliding doors. We have 2 sets. The first was open, and I did, because it was fall, I had corn stalks and bales of hay and mum set out front. So maybe he thought he was running into a field, but this poor guy ran into the second set of doors. They opened, and then he just started running through the store, and it was absolute chaos.
Were you in there at the time?
I was, and I had no idea what to do. I grabbed a couple brooms thinking I was going to corral this thing out the door. I looked like a fool. There was a video we put on social media, and it went viral. But
you should have sent it into like America's Funniest Videos.
Oh, I swear, you're right. I know it. If you were to ask me what I would do if a deer ran in the door today after having that experience, I still wouldn't know what to do.
Did it get out unscathed in the end?
It did, and it ended up running out, fortunately, without getting hit by a car on Southfield Road. There was a close call, but it made it back to the field across the street, and he hopefully is doing okay.
Yeah, I'm sure when he got back to the rest of his group, they just didn't believe his stories. Like, I dodged all the cars.
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes. I mean, we sell deer feed and corn and wild bird seed, and maybe he's just looking for a good deal. But no idea why that happened. I still don't know. But we've had a lot of fun with people bringing pets in. I mean, we have our do-it-yourself dog wash rooms. We've had people bring in potbelly pigs to wash. We had someone bring in a goat. Some people have brought their chickens in our store before. We had a customer in our Livonia location that had a chocolate colored skunk, so a brown skunk as a pet. We've had geese. I'm trying to think. Fox. We have a lot of people bring in some really interesting animals over the years.
Yeah, and the last question I was going to ask before I was thinking about crazy animal stories is one phrase that's always stuck with me since I was young in all my different jobs is that every job can be a self-portrait. What is the self-portrait you try and paint, and what are the qualities personally you have people you would want people to say about you that Mike is this?
The hope, and I try to emulate this, and is the way I was raised, is that we treat people with humility. I mean, we are no better than anyone else. I mean, I'm no better than anyone else. I still clean the toilets at the store, right? So anyone who walks through our doors, I hope would be treated. I say I hope because obviously when you have as many employees and locations as you do, and I'm at each location. I have my partners at each location on a daily basis, and they see through our example, and we are very cognizant of the fact that we've got great individuals working for us. But the hope is that no matter what, anyone walking through our doors feels like they're just part of a greater family, if you will. And that's the whole aspect of what we try to emulate through our locations, is that you just feel comfortable and you feel good about shopping with us. And, that's really important to me,
right.
And so if anything, humility, it's something that I think there needs to be a lot more of in this world, but we really try through our locations and stores to emulate.
All right. Well, we appreciate it. Appreciate your time and great learning about you and your business, Mike.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks. It's been fun.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keith.
Nate. Let's ruminate.
Mike Palmer. Really a nice guy. I mean, he really developed a community in that little corner of Beverly Hills he's got over there.
Yeah, and like a lot of businesses, when it comes to growth, it's not always steady. They really built for 20 years, and then it was from there they built such a strong launching pad. They've now, over 7 years, got to 13 stores, and they've really seemed to have developed the structure well, from handling employees, handling the opportunity for employees, as well as really honing their customer experience.
it's refreshing in a way. I mean, I think it's easy to assume everybody gets into business. I'm going to grow this thing as big as fast as I possibly can. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make millions. It's really refreshing to hear him talk about. I mean, I don't think once he talked about, you know, how important his revenues were, how important his bottom line was, or how important, you know, this or that. It was always about people, community, and doing the right thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a purpose to get you to, whether you call it work, your business, what you do for a lot of your life. You have to have a purpose to get there. And didn't, you know, obviously we talked for quite a while. We didn't have a time to really hone down on his purpose, but I think he made his purpose quite clear. It's to create a place of enjoyment, a place that people feel at home, because dealing with the pets is like part of the family, right?
Absolutely.
So he just tries to be an extension of a service for your family, and having all the events. And we touched on how he gives back with adoptions, but we didn't actually touch even enough on how he gives back. I know he works with autistic employees and tries to give different opportunities there, as well as pet adoptions, and as well as one thing we didn't talk about. I know he does a ton with the Birmingham Pet Pantry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a food pantry for people, but for pets.
He's also really involved with Michigan Humane Society. So there's a lot of things that he does that just really, I mean, are just great examples of a local business leader. I mean, truthfully, and I feel like there's not too many of them anymore. Like, I think a lot of times, like we were saying, like I was just saying, like, it's very easy to sell to an equity company and wash your hands and out the door. And a lot of times that leaves this faceless organization that, you know, maybe doesn't necessarily care as much about the communities they service as they should.
Yeah, and I hope one thing people maybe get from this episode and other episodes is it can be daunting to start your business, whether it's a personal training business, whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's a retail store like this one. You think, oh, okay, I've got to pay for a space, I've got to pay for inventory, I've got to do all this, and it can be extremely daunting. But as you start, if you don't focus on the negatives, and if you start kind of biting away at your plan and have a real vision of why your product, why your service, why your store will be different, then you can gradually make it happen. And I think Mike kind of gave us a good example of that. He didn't just take over from his uncle. He made his uncle a good business proposal. And his uncle didn't quite believe him, but he believed him enough to give him a shot. And you talk the talk, got to walk the walk, right?
Yep. Yeah, and then to just take that model and run with it, I think is really interesting. I think this sort of balance between this managing partner, kind of franchisee, kind of cutting his way through. It's really interesting. Just, you know, there's all these different ways you can do things, and he found his own way, and it's working really well for him.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with this podcast, and we try and reference about the self-belief and get into the position of influence, I feel Mike's self-belief moment was when he was that 24-year-old saying to his uncle, I'm going to make you more profitable as a person by you doing less, because I will grow this so much more. And it's a bit of an audacious claim, but it's a lot of self-belief. And now he really is at a position of influence, not just in his company. I know someone who went to Austin, Texas, and they now have 5 stores, and Mike was a real mentor to them. And he did that just to be a mentor. He owns nothing of those stores in Texas. He just helped those people set it up correctly.
Even so, went so far as to share his own branding.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's obviously nobody can see the podcast what Mike's branding is like, but it's very sharp. It's very slick. He's very, very controlled and calculated, and the branding, the look of everything is top level. I mean, everything about what he's doing is right there.
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed speaking to a lot of local leaders who've shown self-belief to get to a great position of influence, and some of the amazing things they're doing in their companies and their community, and looking forward to speaking to a few more in the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Nate.